All right, kids. So far this week in science, we have looked at where the seed starts in a flower and the first start of life. The next day, we looked at the life cycle of a plant and how the plant starts as a seed, it sprouts, it develops flowers, and then that flower produces a seed. Today, we're going to take a look inside of the flower and actually look at the specific pieces of the flower and how they work to make the seeds. And tomorrow, you're going to look at the purpose of a bee and what the bee is needed to do to help a flower actually reproduce and make more flowers. So first thing we're going to look at is how the flowers come in different shapes and sizes and colors. Real skinny flower here and really tiny seed pods that have not bloomed yet. We've got a bigger flower here, and you can look and you can see really specific the inside of that flower, and you can kind of see the filaments and the anthers and stamen. And we'll talk more about those here in a little bit. We got a larger flower here, and you can see the stem on this one's not as strong as some of the other stems that we've looked at. This one's actually cracking and falling over on us. And then we've got a rose here. We're gonna look at the rose in a pretty good detail here in a minute. So the big part of the flower that you guys are gonna be familiar with, what I'm holding right now, is gonna be the stem. And of course, the stem's job is just to support the flower's head, so that way the flower can stand upright. It channels the water from the roots up to the top of the flower, so the flower and the leaves can actually get water, collect that sunlight in those leaves and create the process of photosynthesis, and it actually generates its own food through that process. And you'll learn more about that in the upcoming days. Through the stem, we're gonna come up to the receptacle, and the receptacle is this bulb right here on the bottom side of the flower. Now, this one's actually pretty large. You can see it pretty well. You can't see the receptacle here as defined, but it's kind of got that dragon scale look to it right here. And on this one, the receptacles are really tiny back and behind every single one of those little purple buds on the outside of that flower. The receptacle's job is to hold the floral organs inside. And you say organs like heart and stuff. The flower doesn't have a heart, but it has other organs inside it that help it make more flowers. And we're going to talk about those. From the receptacle, we're going to move out to the sepal. And the sepal are these small little leaves that are on the bottom side of the plant, the bottom side of the flower. And all they do is not knock off the leaves, the petals. They help the flower stay supported. They protect the leaves, so that way when something comes up and they hit it, it doesn't fall off. So you actually have to pull it out that way to get the flower to come off. The filament, and I'm gonna move to a different flower here so you can see that. Let me get to this one. The filament are these little fiber hair looking things on the inside right there in the middle of that flower. And the filament's function, or its purpose, is to supply and hold up the anther. And the anther is the next piece, is this little yellow bud that you see right here on the top. Now the anther is a key structure in the reproduction of flowering plants. So it sits on top of that filament, okay? And it's the male reproductive organ for the flower, okay? So it's gonna make the flower, help it reproduce when a bee lands on it. So on top of that flower, that little yellow piece right here, now this doesn't have anything that you can see because it's rained today, but it's gonna be pollen. And if you have any allergies, you know all about pollen. But the pollen's purpose is to attract pollinators such as bees, hummingbirds, things along those lines. And it helps protect the inner structure of the flower itself. So I can actually take this and open it, and you can see the inside of that flower right there. And all of those little bitty individual pieces are all seeds. Some of those will attach to a bee's leg, or they'll attach to a hummingbird's wings, and they can fly. When they do, they'll just drop it just like that I dropped on the paper, and they will carry that out, and it can help reproduce that way as well. The next structure that we're going to look at is the petal of a flower. We're going to go back to our rose here. And the individual petals, like this right here, these are used to, let me scroll down here. These are used to collect water, help water drain into the middle of the flower. The colors also help attract other animals. They have scents. And those scents that are on that flower will attract the pollinators, just like the pollen and the stamen on top of the anthers will as well. The next one we're going to look at is the stigma, and I don't really have a great version of that except on this smaller flower right here. And the stigma is going to be this middle piece right there. You can see that little yellowish looking white piece in the middle. And the stigma, it's to trap pollen in the hair. So they got like little bitty tiny hairs, kind of like on the bottom of a rose bush, those thorns. And inside that whole purpose of that is to attract and hold the pollen. And it increases the efficiency of whenever a bee or a hummingbird comes over, they land on that, and it transfers from the hair on the bottom of this into the hair on the bee's legs or into the feathers of the hummingbird's wings. And they're covered in a sticky, waxy substance, so that way it helps stay on that animal that actually lands or touches this flower. We're gonna go to the style next, and the style is on the bottom of that same filament, and you can kind of see that here. Let me try to pull that out. And it's not coming off. Let's go to the next flower. The style is that on the inside, okay? Inside of this big piece, which is the bulb, I don't know if you can see it there or not. It's that same bulb here. It's on the inside of that flower I have not actually ripped open yet. Inside of that style is gonna be the ovary, and inside of the ovary is gonna be the ovule. And both of those are what helps make a new plant after the bee has pollinated, after it's landed on one plant here and took those seeds and that pollen and carried it over to this plant. It'll help make and fertilize the new eggs, or the seeds rather, for this plant.